Sorry about that if you could hear me talking there, but it was faded. We just had some technical issues there that I was able to resolve quickly. So we are back with the top 4 for Team Bayformers Encounter 5. This is going to be the first of hopefully 2 matches we will be streaming. However, I am playing in this one, and as a result, I cannot commentate because that would be a conflict of interest. What I can tell you before we get started is that we are going to be seeing Devastator on my end versus Naga playing FortMax. And in place of myself in terms of commentary, I have Bill Moo and Tank here to provide that. Gentlemen, you have the call.
All right. Well, Hawk's given us the all clear here, so they're going to be shuffling up for the moment. But this is a pretty interesting matchup compared to a lot of what we've been seeing in some of the past tournaments in Encounter 4 and Encounter 3.
King's coming through.
What? Sorry?
I hear King Naga.
Is Naga in the voice call?
Never mind. I'll just try to ignore him.
You could just right-click on him and then hit mute if you have to. But
there we go.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, what do you think we're going to see in this match tonight, Bill?
I think most of the random factors are going to lay on what King Naga can flip. I think that's going to be most of the sort of decision making. Either the random factor. Hawk. I think Hawk has gotten a lot more comfortable with playing his deck over the course of the tournament, and I think that he's going to be much more likely to sort of hit those notes sequentially. But I think that whatever Naga is able to put down on the board, whether it be the proc on FortMax, as well as what he can pull Cerebros, I think that's really going to be the deciding factor in this matchup.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about Naga's deck is that FortMax is actually running Flintlock as the head for Cerebros to help get that tough out and defend for as much as possible while still hitting those multicolor flips. It's a really interesting combination that makes his deck look a lot more defensive than it really is.
Yeah, and that one thing that I think a lot of people weren't exactly anticipating with Flintlock is that it's just generating so much flip churn that his scrap pile is just gaining tools for Cerebros so quickly, and that's definitely not something you see, at least at that rate, with some of the more chosen Titan Master heads that are included in this deck generally, things like Grax or Emissary, I guess, if you're playing the stock set.
All right.
Got a roll here.
It is Hawk's choice. We have a 9 to a 5, and Hawk is going first.
Yeah, as mentioned, I do think the first 2 turns for Naga are just critical to each game. So we'll just have to see what he flips.
Hawk has what he has called an interesting opening hand, so that is going to be something, and I'm curious as to exactly what he's drawn.
Personally, I'm thinking that Hawk should be playing. He's got some flips here. Ooh, a lot of white pips on this.
That is a block 4, take 2, or Hawk is taking 2 off of FortMax's ability because Naga hit the blue-white trigger.
Now, what I was going to say is that I think if I were Hawk, I think I'd be attacking with the lower health characters first, because those are just that much more likely to be removed from the field quickly due to FortMax's ping.
Yeah, because when FortMax is going to attack out here, there's going to be a lot of direct damage thrown around, and I'm not sure that Hawk is really accounting for that right now.
And when it comes down to it, even with a Malevolent Architect in play, characters like Bone Crusher in particular in Mixmaster still only have about 6 health. So it just takes a couple pings just to make them put them out of play even quicker than the rest.
We've got a FortMax flip, of course. And Naga is still deciding here. But I think he's really got to make the most out of trying to get Scrapper off the board.
Looks like you're checking some sleeves, just like last game, just to make sure that there's no confusion between the sleeves and cards that are flipped. Something I would have started checking last game, and I'm glad that Hawk has remembered to do it this game as well.
Yeah, there is definitely an opportunity for that if someone was to be a little bit of a slimy person to try and cheat some cards into the deck. But, ooh, and we have an energy pack on FortMax.
I think what Naga's thinking is that he's going to try his best to try to keep in this ping mode as long as possible.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's the right move because he's triggered here. He's putting a damage on each of the Constructicons, and that puts Bone Crusher and I think Mixmaster both within a very reasonable kill distance. And it turns off Malevolent Architect's extra 2 health for each of the characters.
Yep, everybody has health now that is printed on the card, other than Scrapper, who is taking a siesta in the KO area.
Yes, and that is a 1-shot, 1 kill. And FortMax is on his other side as per his abilities.
We'll see if Hawkhammer is able to pick up some of the patterns here and see if he adjusts based on FortMax's damage output.
Ooh, a grenade launcher onto Bone Crusher and a fight for position on Bone Crusher.
That is basically a perfect pull. So he's definitely getting the cards he needs from the deck.
Mm-hmm. At least for the moment. He did say that his hand is interesting, so I don't know if that means the rest of what he has is good or bad.
And we see a fight for position.
And Hawk's got 9 Pierce 4. Ooh.
That was an amazing flip on Naga's side.
Yeah, that's an incredible flip. He blocked 8 of Hawk's 9 and only took the Pierce 4. So I think Hawk's going to be in a pretty bad state here because FortMax is going to be on the table a lot longer than he's anticipating. Ooh. The double whites, that's not good. But 3 Pierce 2 from Mixmaster isn't necessarily the worst attack. A power punch for an Impetuous. Yeah. Which makes sense because Hawk needs to try and kill the long game here because that's what Naga wants is to stick FortMax in his is to stick FortMax in FortMax mode and keep him there for as long as possible.
So far, 9 damage on 19 health. So Hawk still has a long way to go.
And Long Haul goes in for 5. Ooh.
That was a bad flip.
That was a very bad flip on Naga's part, but he's only at 12. So that attack, as good as it was, didn't do a ton. And last up is Hook. And Hook's in for 4. He's got the trigger.
And Naga's letting the espionage go.
Probably a smart idea. Hawk's not super worried about the enigmas and the corrupt constructions right now, and I think Naga realizes that.
Down goes a combat dagger, making things even more likely that he's going to trigger on attack.
Oof. Yep, that is a definite truth, because now he's got bold 2. And Naga has asked about upgrades in the scrap. Hawk's got 10 upgrades in the scrap. Naga likely has a sec check in hand, if I had to guess. Because he's trying to make the decision about whether or not he plays the sec check here to empty Hawk's hand of any weapons that he could use to get FortMax off the board.
Knowing Hawk's deck, if he has 10 upgrades in his scrap pile, that means he only has about 6 or 7 potentially in the hand or in the deck itself. So I don't think that's necessarily a good play. If not, but he plays it anyway.
Ooh, but he's playing it anyways.
Looks like 2 fusion bores.
Oh, that's a huge hurt. Yeah, that's a big play from Naga, and not one I would have expected, because those fusion bores were all of Hawk's attack power for the current moment. That corrupt construction does help, but it's not quite there. And Naga's asking about black icons in the scrap. And Hawk has 9 black icons in his scrap. So Naga's likely trying to see how much Pierce he thinks that he can, or that Hawk can get out on him next turn, just based on his deck alone.
Well, knowing Naga, he's probably looking at the public deck list right now on his screen. So
Oh, that's true too. Yeah.
he's probably able to make at least a certain assumption as to what's left for flips. Definitely one of the interesting aspects of Top Cut is that everyone gets access to everybody else's deck list. So what was unknown, potentially unknown during the Swiss bracket, it's not so unknown in Top Cut.
Which makes it a little bit more cutthroat, because if you know what your opponent's deck can do, then you know how to counter them a little bit more closely, and you can see the kind of strategy that they're concocting before you even face their deck once. Because there have been a lot of situations where 2 people in Top Cut have never seen each other's decks before. I think Hawk has seen Fortress Maximus. At least he says he's done so in testing. But in terms of actually in Swiss, I don't think they met.
Yeah, I believe this is their first matchup in the tournament itself. But Hawk definitely has familiarity against this deck outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that Naga hasn't optimized it in some way that potentially Hawk isn't anticipating, but Naga's a pretty crafty player and definitely apt to experiment and iterate upon decks. So, but the fact that things are a little bit more known now, I would say Naga's probably going to be a little bit more on top of that, especially since I think we saw him go for the mouse, so I think that's a pretty good sign. He's looking at it right now.
Mm-hmm. He's probably trying to see if he can guarantee a kill just based on the amount of blue that's potentially in Hawk's deck, which I think he's got, and he's got the trigger here as well. And Hawk says that this is not ideal for him, which is not surprising. And Hook is gone. So he was I'm probably right. He was likely trying to see if Hawk could get Hook to survive this attack, or if Hook was just going to get wiped there.
And FortMax in general is a fantastic Constructicons counter.
Yes.
No matter how you cut it, and it doesn't matter what environment you're in, even more so outside of the Turbo Rev and Old Punks factor in this tournament, I still think it's a very strong counter for this deck.
Yeah. The wideness of the Constructicons means that FortMax is putting out a lot more damage than against your regular 3-wide or even 4-wide, like Champion's deck or Brett's deck. So this is definitely not a match that Hawk is well suited for, unfortunately. But that wide health pool does potentially mean that he can get a little bit of an extra boost out of some of the characters who are there. as long as he can keep them on the board to form Devastator. But with 2 counters on the tower, I don't see that happening. And we have a
There's
photon
Photon
charge on Mixmaster, yes. Oh. Hawk has a
which
ruling
means
question here.
Mixmaster is likely to die upon use. Okay, I guess it's only up to 4, so I guess that's not actually the case. See, Mixmaster has 2 defense in this mode, so Mixmaster will not be taking the damage by utilizing the photon charge, but the extra damage coming from photon charge after attack won't be a factor.
And Hawk's question was a pretty smart one, because I can see what he was kind of trying to go for. He was trying to see if he could photon charge Fortress Maximus, and then when Cerebros deploys, do the photon charge damage to him. But unfortunately, that's not the way that works.
Yeah. Cerebros is considered part of FortMax, not a separate character.
And Hawk's going in for 5 Pierce 3. Ooh. And FortMax gets his trigger and kills before combat happens. Oh, and Hawk's trying to build the tower now. I think he's realizing that he's put himself in a bad situation here. And Hawk gets through Pierce 1 onto FortMax.
Looks like he has 2 health left. So there's 1 more Pierce.
That was 3 Pierce 1. So all Hawk needs to do to get FortMax to get off the board is to just pierce him for 1. But the problem with that is that he then has to deal with Cerebros, and with all of his characters tapped out, Naga's going to get the opportunity to hit whoever he wants. And I don't think Hawk is prepared for that.
Yeah, it's a dire state right now.
And Naga's just doing some quick reshuffling.
One thing to point out is Naga's playing a very large deck. I believe it's over 60 cards, but the one good thing that does is it just gives him a lot of tools to play with Cerebros.
Ooh, I have to actually check that then. Ooh, yeah, he's got a 51 card deck. Not what I would have expected out of a competitive tournament, but the longer FortMax can keep that scrapyard online, the better he is. And FortMax is off the board, luckily for Hawk, but now that gets Cerebros out, and with that tough from Flintlock, that's a heck of a hill to climb.
Yeah, one disadvantage with the larger deck is that it's really the size of the deck is timed for sort of more 3 versus 4 matchups, and against 6, Flintlock is just well, in the beginning it'll be Cerebros flipping just so many more cards and much more likely to populate the scrap pile and get a shuffle in there somewhere. But I think with so many attackers coming into Flintlock in this state of the game, the scrap pile resource is just that much more volatile.
Because if Hawk for some reason can make Brett burn through his deck faster, or Naga will just burn through his deck faster on his own, and we don't have to worry about that. And I can venture that what Naga's likely trying to do here is get his trigger and pull that energy pack back in. Or pull an energy pack. Oh, but he doesn't get the trigger. No white icon. Yeah, but hitting for 9, that takes a long haul off the board rather quickly.
Yeah, might be a non-factor. in the last game that Naga played, he was hitting his triggers basically every single time. So that is definitely not typical.
Mm-hmm.
That said, Cerebros is going to be playing defense, and it's just that much more likely he's going to hit his trigger on defense. So there's still that chance that
Mm-hmm.
the energy pack will get placed on him very soon.
And this change of timing may help save Hawk. And Hawk's going in for 11 Pierce 1 currently.
I'm guessing he's going to pull with that much incoming damage, he's going to pull the Medic's Protective Field.
Almost certainly. Or he'll pull the Armed Hovercraft, which takes Mixmaster off the board before the attack can resolve, and Hawk concedes round 1. Yeah, I think, unfortunately, Naga's deck is just too fine-tuned for most of us to get through. And with all that direct damage, it's not doing the Constructicons any favors here. And Hawk has already made the decision that he's going to go first again. And he thinks that he had a good strategy, but he just executed it wrong. I'm unfortunately not sure about that. I think you're definitely right that Hawk should be sending in his softer characters first to try and bait FortMax into killing off the small characters. And I think Hawk is failing to notice that these smaller health pool characters are going to end up dying just from the direct damage that FortMax pumps out.
Yeah. I'm sure Hawk will understand that in the postmortem, but I think that as far as the game plan that Hawk's likely going into the field with, he's relying a little bit too much on the learnings that he had from the last couple matches, which I don't think are necessarily relevant from an apples to oranges perspective. It's not apples to apples here. You're dealing with a singular threat.
Yeah, you're dealing with a very powerful direct damage based singular threat, and Hawk needs to realize that his total health pool is the most important fight against FortMax, and with how much damage Brett's throwing around and the fact that the Constructicons are such small characters, it's difficult for the Constructicons to really put up a good fight, even with Turbo Revan's Malevolent Architect strat. And they're currently still shuffling. Hawk has said he's going to go first here. Oh, did I accidentally say that? I'm sorry. Yeah, my apologies there. I think I accidentally said Brett. I meant Naga. Bill, I think Bill caught me, but I got a lot on the brain. Yeah, but his last match against Brett is a full orange deck that attacks like crazy, and Hawk was able to pull it out by just having the card advantage game and taking advantage of the Constructicons, just tiny bits of extra health to make sure that they were lasting longer. The difference with FortMax is that this big target that puts out a lot of damage, it's difficult, and of course, because he has so much blue, he's defending for a ton. It's a hard call for Hawk to use the same strategy that he tried against Brett.
Yeah, it's definitely something that separates the good players from the great players, is the ability to, make adjustments on the fly based off of observed. Yeah. And I definitely give Hawkhammer a lot of credit as far as his leveling up of playing this deck over the course of the tournament. And I'm sure, after this experience, he'll likely go back to the locker room and discuss it with his coach and the rest of his team. They'll slap each other on the back and, drink some bubblies, and he'll learn from it. So, yeah. Looks like he's sticking with his game plan, as mentioned.
Yep, he's sticking with the same game plan, so he's going in with Scrapper. But he's got the energy conversion field very, very early.
Mm-hmm. That's very lucky on his part. That card is definitely going to make a difference when it comes to protecting against FortMax's ping. We'll see if Naga is able to pull out the espionage or counter espionage to keep that from happening next turn.
Very true. However, I wouldn't think that I would not think that I would not think that Naga is going to be playing counter espionage just because this isn't a secret action deck and he doesn't really have a ton to fear. Even that energy conversion field, there's a lot of damage being thrown around, and I think he can just ignore it, to be quite honest. But it is a question that you have to ask: is he going to try and counterplay it, or is he just going to let it go by?
Well, one thing's for certain, Naga's definitely not a person to get frozen in indecision just to let it go.
That is very true. Naga, you can see the calculations going on as he looks through the lists on Teletran likely and shuffles his deck, checks what Hawk's got going on. I think he's already starting to formulate his decision plan here. It's just down to exactly what he wants to do. And he's already got an armed hovercraft down. That's a lot of good damage.
At least for this turn, we're probably looking at 3 damage on all of the Constructicons at the end of this melee.
Almost certainly. And that is a lot of damage that one energy conversion field cannot solve. Oh, and he just triggers on the very last card. And that is a 10 attack into Scrapper. And Scrapper is off the board.
Just to provide a little bit of context as to the current iteration of Energy Conversion Field, it's the 1.1 version. The text itself actually reads, if an opponent's card would do non-attack damage to more than one of your characters, when it says when revealed, instead repair 1 damage from all of your characters. So it doesn't really matter how much incoming damage is coming in. The +2, the 2 damage coming in from FortMax would be nullified, and instead Hawk would be able to repair 1 damage to all of his characters. So
yeah,
I think a previous version had mentioned that it was basically take the damage -1. And that's not the case with the current wording.
Yeah, and Hawk is Bone Crusher. Here's 3.
Yeah, 2 Fusion Borers on the flip kind of makes me wonder how good the shuffle was.
Yeah, it can't be that good, unfortunately. And Naga drops a security checkpoint for a backup beam.
Yeah, I think Naga has some confidence that FortMax is going to be around for another turn.
I can definitely agree there. And Mixmaster goes in for 5. Goes up to 7.
Hawk is going for the Enigma.
Which I think is a smart call here. The earlier he can get that out and get that into his hand, the better. Because I do think that this is going to be a war of attrition for Hawk, where he has to just simply outlast FortMax. And if he can form Devastator and then punch Cerebros, he's got that much more of an opportunity. And Hawk's trying to decide if he wants to pitch.
He does have at least 5 cards in hand, so it really depends on what those cards are and how much utility he can get out. He's pitching the Energy Conversion Field.
He's pitching the Energy Conversion Field. That feels like a mistake, unfortunately.
I'm guessing that Hawk is thinking that the one he has down will be enough and he's able to power through FortMax in the next turn. That is my guess. There's a great flip.
That is 6, no pitch. And Naga takes 2, which puts him at 12. Yeah, Hawk was unfortunately really hoping for a kill on FortMax there, and especially with those 2 oranges, he was definitely trying to aim to get FortMax off the board there. But unfortunately, Naga's deck just would not let him have it.
Counter espionage.
Ooh. Yep, and Hawk's a little bit salty, unfortunately. To be fair, I would too if I brought in a card specifically for counterplay, but... And we have a work overtime, towering presence. He's got pretty much all the Constructicon cards in his hand. Yeah, I think unfortunately Hawk has kind of admitted defeat here. With that energy conversion field scrapped, Hawk has lost a lot of his potential counterplay. And he's going into Hook trying to get the healthiest guy off the board. And he gets the trigger just barely. And that kills Bone Crusher. And Hook is also dead.
This might be a situation where the lack of upgrades in Hawk's deck might have been, a mitigate or a factor in this result, because we do know that he's running a lower number of upgrades.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that's hurting him here, because he's trying to, and it's also hurting him because he's not playing a lot of upgrades that stick around. He's got grenade launchers, fusion borers, power punches, and all of those fall off at the end of turn, meaning his combat power is constantly being limited over and over and over again. And he throws down a fight for position on Mixmaster and sends him in. And that's 6 Pierce 2 coming from Mixmaster. And he kills before combat damage. Yeah, and that is one of the most annoying parts of FortMax, is that he can just kill you before attack damage. It's something that you have to really remember, and against FortMax, you have to have just direct damage counters, otherwise you're gone. And unfortunately, that energy conversion field was not enough.
Luckily, in the upcoming wave from Team Bayformers Wastelands, there are a couple additional options for mitigating direct damage, at least in temporary ways.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is currently in the public data right now.
Oh, wow. And Hawk has just conceded. So that means that Naga moves on to the final 2. But
yeah, it was definitely a rough matchup for Hawk on this one, even going in. So yeah, he knew that. He said as much going into, and yeah, it was definitely a rough matchup. But I definitely appreciate the fact that we got to see a game, and this is definitely something we need to anticipate coming into the next season, because the Wastelands Tournament Season 2, the goal is to have Turbo Revan, Old Punks, Arcwave 1, and World Strike and Wastelands legal. So
yes.
there's definitely going to be much more of a possibility where we'll see decks like FortMax and Devastator come up against each other in a competitive environment.
You're definitely likely to see a humongous variety of decks. With the support from Turbo Revving, bringing characters like Astrotrain and Skytread up to speed, some of the stuff from Wave BFB that's opening up new avenues for old characters that people have kind of forgotten. With like one character who I don't think their stratagem has been revealed yet. There's so much between all of these different waves that combined together is certainly going to change the outcome of the Encounter series future.
Yeah, the future is definitely looking good as far as deck diversity. this tournament in particular has been an amazing surprise when it came to, well, even in the beginning when I started seeing deck lists, just seeing so much diversity, just doing well, especially these Devastator decks that have been coming up, but also decks like Naga's FortMax have been very fun to watch. Seeing a couple of returns of old favorites like Smoke on the Water. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun watching from beginning to end.
Ooh, yeah, and Hawk's showing off what he had brought in from his sideboard. He brought in 2 energy conversion fields and 2 belligerences. My honest opinion, he should have brought in 3 belligerences if he had them, and maybe even some end hostilities in order to shut down those potential triggers from FortMax.
Yeah, and hostilities such as just an amazing card. Good for context, even outside of FortMax. It's just it's just really good.
Yeah, it's a card that really helps blue decks come back into the fold, but I unfortunately have to question the designer's intent because it's been quite warped at this point.
Yeah, that's definitely a point of contention in the community when it comes to belligerence and then hostilities. But hopefully one that some rules body can solve in the future.
Definitely. All right. Well, I am going to let Hawk know that we're going to wrap it up here. So, just as a couple last notes, while Bill has talked to us about the Encounter Season 2, there's so much in store for you in Team Bayformers Encounter series and everything else. You have Turbo Revan, you have the Encounter Season 2, Bayformers, Wastelands. There's so much to look forward to, and Encounter 5 is unfortunately only the tip of the iceberg. So, thank you all for watching this stream on Servants of the Dice Gods. Be sure to check me out on Twitch as well. Be sure to join the Bayformers Discord if you haven't already, and we hope to see you around.
See you soon.
Bye! Shut it down, you moron!